In fact, if you look at about, 10 days ago, we were about 283 new cases a day. We are now just over 3,000, 3,200. Still very much less than what you got in the United Kingdom, about a tenth of it, but it is spreading rapidly. It started off in the Gauteng province around Johannesburg, and then is now certainly spreading to other provinces as well.
How worried are you about this? The question that's being asked here is, will it displace Delta?
Yeah, that's really the question that we're wrestling with, because it's got many more mutations in Delta. Delta's got probably about 16 identified mutations. This has got over 30 in the spike protein, the critical part of the virus. So that makes it really a variant of concern. And I think it's going to be called a variant of, or labeled a variant of concern. So we are worried about it. But I suppose we're trying always to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And this is speculation. I must stress it is speculation. But because it's got all these mutations, does it in fact destabilize the virus? It might make it less fit than Delta. And in a way, hopefully it won't displace Delta, because Delta, we know, responds very well to the vaccine. But at the moment, it's certainly becoming the dominant of the isolates that you looked at, the dominant variant. But it doesn't mean to say that it always remain that way.
So even if it does go away, relatively speaking, quickly, while it is here, what are the signs about its virulence, the extent to which it's serious and will cause hospitalizations?
Yeah, it's early days. We don't know as yet. That's the bottom line. There's an optimistic view that so far the cases have been pretty mild. And if we have a hospital surveillance program as well, and that hasn't shown any significant uptick. So certainly the cases that have occurred so far have all been mild cases, mild to moderate cases, and that's a good sign. But let me stress, it is early days. We still have to wait and see.
Do you have any idea yet how this mutation came about? Is it just a freak? Is it just something that you might expect in the normal course of events? Or is there anything special about the origins of this?
Well, this is a virus. It's a plastic virus. In other words, it tends to mutate very readily, and under conditions where it is mutating, particularly in people who might be partially immunosuppressed. In other words, where they're not getting rid of the virus, then that remnant virus which remains will be selectively enriched to escape immunity and to become more transmissible. So I think that's probably where it does arise, to a large extent, unvaccinated people, because they're a reservoir of the virus multiplying, and also to a large extent people who are immunosuppressed or partially immunosuppressed because they're not clearing the virus when they do get infected.
It's being said that, speaking of immunosuppression, that one of the particular factors in South Africa has been the spread of HIV there. Do you credit that? Do you think that's part of the story?
It may be part of the story. It would seem logical that it could be. But, there are many causes of immunosuppression, not only people living with HIV who aren't on treatment. People who are on treatment who are well controlled, that would not be a problem. They are immunocompetent like the rest of us would be. But it may well be a problem in those that are not well controlled, not on treatment, or haven't started treatment yet. It may be a factor.
The big question, of course, that everybody is wondering about, and we may not have the information yet, but do you have any thought about the efficacy of the existing vaccines against this variant?
Yeah, again, it is early days. There's a frenzy of activity, let me put it that way, doing what we call the neutralization antibody tests. Testing for how neutralizing antibodies behave against this particular variant. It's been done particularly in 2 laboratories in South Africa. And hopefully we'll get that data fairly soon, because obviously it's critical data. So at this stage, we don't really know. I think we can be a little bit optimistic because we do know that the vaccine does behave well against the pre-existing variants. And those mutations are what happens, what is present in the previous variants. What is unknown is that this constellation of mutants, will that kind of enhance what we call vaccine escape? That we don't know yet, but we are optimistic. And I think we can be fairly comfortably optimistic that the vaccine will at least protect against severe disease. I think that's the bottom line.
Broadly speaking, from what you've been saying this morning, Professor, though you are, of course, thinking about what we should do, you seem to be saying we shouldn't be too alarmed at this stage.
I think alarmed is too strong a word. I would say certainly concerned. We are concerned in this country with the expansion. We're heading into our fourth wave. So that's cause for concern. And I think it should motivate people to do two things. One of them is that we need to up in this country our vaccination coverage. We're certainly not anywhere near what we should be. That's the one thing. We need to impress on people to get vaccinated. And secondly, we also need to impress on people that we still need to carry out those infection prevention measures. The masking, the social distancing, etc. The virus is still around, it's still expanding. And even if one is vaccinated, there's no guarantee that you're not going to get infected, and there's no guarantee you're not going to pass it on. So those are the two things, vaccination and also infection prevention measures.
And are the infection prevention measures, masking and so on, working in South Africa?
Yeah, sure. That's a difficult one to really answer. I think, if we compare it to, for example, the United Kingdom, a lot more people here are wearing masks, are trying to avoid the social functions. The problem is, of course, we're coming to the end of our year, end of our academic year, end of our school year. So, and also it's coming to the Christmas holidays. So that's a problem because there are parties and so on. And I think we're trying to kind of impress on people. I think this variant is probably going to be a bit of a kind of a wake-up call. And also the expansion of infections is going to be a wake-up call. So I can just hope, yes, that there will be an improvement in infection prevention adherence.
Just one last quick question, Professor. People here are campaigning about the number of vaccines, they say maybe about a couple of 100 million doses, which are essentially sitting unused in rich countries. Do you think rich countries are doing enough to support countries like yours?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think this is a major global ethical problem. The reason why we have these variants is because the world is not vaccinated. If there was an equitable distribution of that, particularly to the African continent, which is really being deprived of vaccines, and the rich countries are hoarding vaccines, there's no doubt about it. I think this is really a blot on the behavior of the wealthy countries.
Professor Barry Schoub, thank you very much indeed. Now, Priti Patel came into her job as Home Secretary apologising for what she herself called the terrible injustices of the Windrush scandal. But many of the families torn apart by the wrongful deportation of people to the Caribbean say they've still not been compensated for the hurt they were caused. I'm now